Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series, Interviews with Aurovilians. I'm happy to say that Holger has agreed to do another interview with us and talk about his life in Auroville and his experiences, and especially in music. Music is such an important art. Sri Aurobindo would almost put it at the very top, along with poetry and many other things. But music is very high because it brings down something to the earth that we've not experienced before. So many things have been attempted, like the 12-tone system, which fell flat. and with so many other, even modern systems that are struggling to express something that's perhaps even inexpressible, but expressible only through music.
I would say like that, yes.
Oh, good. So, Holger, very nice to have you back with us again. I think we were, in our last interview, we ended with asking you about Mother and her writing, and now I'd like to ask you about Mother as the avatar in a body.
Only in the recent years, maybe 10 years, maybe 8 years, I can make sense of this yoga of the cells thing that I read and said, okay, fine, but do I feel my cells? I don't. So, yeah. But now, working with the music has become, in retrospect, I can see that this is for me the entry, the key to the body.
Yes.
I take a minute to explain how that is. To play violin, be a violinist, you have to do a lot with getting a pitch right, because there are no frets or keys.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, then if you don't get it, it feels bad, so you're always in a little fear, etc. And you get used to this fear, and then you play, and it's like, oh my God, what will be the next tone coming? Is this, it was too flat, it was too sharp. So this becomes a kind of stress feeling whenever you play violin, in my case, 8 hours a day.
Would it be the same with all string instruments?
Yes. Yes. Or it's a wrong key on the piano or so. Yeah. Or a failed embouchure on the trombone or so. We play these instruments with the body. And I thought for 35 years or 40 years, I thought the sharper my ear is, the better I will play. And when I fail to play right and in tune, it is because I'm not gifted enough. So I'm mediocre. Then only in the last years I understood, if I hear that I play a wrong note, it's too late. So hearing will never bring me the right note. It is only the tool you use to know whether it's right or wrong. But who will play the right note is the body only.
Mother speaks about this when she went to that concert of the violinist.
Mm-hmm.
And she saw this man, and he was playing far above what he could normally play. And then she saw that Isahi's hands had entered this man.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So here again, the body.
So, exactly. So it's a kind of, in this case, a kind of floating consciousness, you could say, of physical nature. And when one is lucky enough to practice and have time to practice an instrument that much, you are all the time sharpening your consciousness for that body. And you go through, you find then that you need to relax a lot. If you look at somebody like Pavarotti, you understand this is pure relaxation.
Exactly.
And where? Because why is this man not enlightened or happy? Why does he eat himself to death with spaghetti?
Yeah.
Because this is a very limited but very deep realization on the physical. And it has to do with the violin also a lot with the cleanliness in the hand, insights, so to speak, in the consciousness of the hand, and that is not isolated. It's in the breathing, it's in everything. So that is only in the last years I understand how I can now say that this work, my work, to practice an instrument, is my yoga.
Well, I want to take up something with you here. My voice teacher, a great German classical teacher, said to me one time, don't take up yoga, because Menuhin did, and he was not the same after he did that. Is that correct in your opinion?
The causality, I think, is wrong.
Oh,
I think this is not the case.
okay.
But I wouldn't know for sure. I know of Menuhin that he was of course being able to play chaconne with 6 years and pretty flawless.
Yes.
And what he had practiced 2 years as a child, so impossible, I would say.
Yeah.
Yet we have videos of it, so
Right.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then he went, I think with 16, he went to Europe to study with Eugène Ysaÿe,
Yes.
who was one of the towering
One of
figures.
the great ones, yeah.
And Ysaÿe had him play scales. And then he rejected him. He says, I'm not teaching you. Because I'm afraid. When we start with this, you cannot play violin anymore.
Oh.
So he didn't want to disturb this somewhat unconscious rightness of everything that was given to Menuhin.
Yes, yes.
And a few years later, Menuhin went as a GI to the Second World War, and when he came back and couldn't play anymore. And that is when he started practicing violin. It didn't take too long for him, but he really had to relearn playing violin, so I hear. And that is why it's justified. Then he said famously, playing violin is 1% inspiration, 99% transpiration. And he was then looking for other things and a genuine interest in widening his horizon all over his life. That was really interesting. That's why he played with Capelli or Ravi Shankar. And these are not great things to write home about. The recordings with Capelli is not jazz, and the recording with Ravi Shankar is not classical Indian music. But I think it's his genuine interest. It was his genuine interest. And so was yoga his genuine interest. And I think the decline in his capacities would have come in, some people get old early. Me?
Yeah, true. It's true.
Others play like Milstein till they are 80 and it's still clean. But not because of yoga. I don't think so.
Now, let's go back to the Auroville Charter for a little bit.
Okay.
Because that's such a subject. It's so important.
Yes.
And new people coming hardly know anything about it, wanting to join Auroville.
I'm very lenient on that one. Of course, it is possible that people come with just attracted by nice greenery or something like that. It's the same as in the 70s, there were probably hippies coming and going because of some romantic idea. Auroville must have, and so far always had, the capacity to, after 1, 2, 3, 5 years, these people are going again. There is a natural selection process. Although I must say, for my generation of Aurovilians, because life is rather unpleasant, I could have had a much more pleasant life.
Of course.
Where I came from. So you must have some belief or something where you say, oh, there I get something. Something real is happening that otherwise may not happen at home. I verified that frequently. When I came, I traveled in the beginning every year or every second year to Germany with the children, for the grandparents and so on. So I was always there for 3 to 4 weeks, reconnecting to my former colleagues and so on. And I always could see, no, I'm very well sitting in Auroville.
Most interesting.
Yeah, it was very good. Super clear it came. Me with my anti-government and anti-police and, these kind of things. I came 2 years after being Aurovilian. 2 years I was there. I had the chance to work something, but I needed a computer from a friend. I took my mom's car. There was a little parking problem, and the result was the police came and checked the car of my mother. Somebody had written down the number plate, and they said, yes, that's the car. And there was a very small scratch, and they said, okay, this is, I don't know the English term, if you leave a place of accident without, that is...
it's a criminal offense.
It's a criminal. So they arrested me, particularly also because I had the passport, but I was not in Germany. This is my parents' house. So they had to take me. And then I was there with the police all afternoon. And it was the Bavarian police. And they said, I know we saw it. There was nothing actually. You could not even see any problem. I said, I went out of the car. There was no problem. And he says, yeah, we know, but you should have called the police. And now it's difficult because now we have to, arrest you. And it was horrible. And then I was lucky. The owner of this car that I had touched came in, and she had long fingernails with a ring inside, and not what German policemen like. And she was very arrogant. So suddenly they were on my side. And they started to do everything they could in order to get me home on the same day. They arrested me, and there was little Jonas staying there. Papa, where are you going? It was crazy. And I was so calm all the time. And I did not develop this puberty resentment against the bad police and stuff like that. Because I said, these people are apparently doing their job. It's very okay. They're friendly people. And in the end, they said, the best we can do for you is we knock that off, but you have to pay 500, which was about half of what I could earn in the next 2 weeks. And I was not even angry about that. So they brought me home in their police car and apologized. And it was like very amicable. And I was very clear. I could not ever have dreamed of me being in this condition.
But your calmness was everything.
Without Sriaubindo's and Auroville's training and clarity. And that was, for me, just illustrative. I said, oh, this is really happening. I didn't even realize I changed so much. That's wonderful. So things like that.
What year was this?
94, I think.
Oh, you were 36 years old,
Yeah.
roughly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
It was not. I couldn't believe myself that
Yeah.
this is really
That
happening.
you were so calm through
Yes,
this
it
whole
was
thing.
wonderful.
I'd like to ask you to share some of the things you are doing now in recording, and because you have such a background.
Yeah. Well, right now we are doing readings, of course, which is very nice for me because I can read these texts many times before I can send them off as edited and cleaned. That's
Yes.
very good.
Well, the other thing
But
you're doing,
I would
making the sentences is so valuable to me. Yeah.
This one.
Yeah.
This is very good. Yeah, reading something like human unity, the ideal of human unity. Sometimes the sentences are really long, and I would say tedious to read. And when I write it for you on the screen, first of all, I make a new paragraph for every sentence. And then I see where is the next line coming to make it more clear while you read. So you can read it without thinking too much back and forth, which results in wrong breathings and hesitations that are not motivated and all that.
Yes.
So that was working very fine for both of us and required me to understand every sentence fully and not go on, which as a normal reader I would do. Yeah, impatience.
Sure, we would pass.
Yeah, I got
over.
that. No, you didn't. And suddenly 5 sentences later, you need that what he just said. Otherwise you don't understand anymore what's coming. So that's at the moment very rewarding for me. In terms of music also, I always feel I could take up work that is very rewarding. For the 50th anniversary, for example, I took a organ improvisation or harmonium improvisation by Mother and transcribed it. So I wrote every note she played. Takes a bit of a time.
Yes.
And it's very, very interesting. I have to say, in terms of background, Mother is not a very good musician. She's not a very skilled player, and she's also basically not a composer. So she's much less of a musician than she's as a painter. As a painter, she's more skilled. Was more skilled or whatever. So I was very interested in doing that and see what does that do to me when I listen to this that closely, that I can.
It's very interesting. I want to go deeply into this.
Yes, I think this is one of the most interesting things I did in the past 10 years was to transcribe this. And then I set it for organ because she famously always wanted an organ in Auroville, which for practical reasons luckily never happened because in this humidity it will not be useful. But anyway, I put it on church organ and solved this with samples of real church organs. And I found a retired church organist, a Dutch fellow, and said, please go back to your work and do this. And he reluctantly at first agreed. And then I put orchestra also.
I see.
Yeah. So there were flute and clarinet and saxophone, soprano saxophone I had as a kind of oboe, and violins and percussion. And so the best I could do in terms of orchestra. And then I put choir on it also.
Ooh.
So the Auroville choir was singing that. And for that one, I used lyrics, excerpts from Savitri mostly, which I basically, around the theme, searched by what is the feeling I need here? Where is some poetry of that? So it's a hodgepodge of lines. And Nuria was doing a fantastic work to then actually put this into reality with the choir,
yes.
and practiced a lot. And why it was so fantastic for me to do this work is because when you are not receiving the music of Mother,
This is a
but you are
very
actually playing it with
important point, yes.
with every cell, then you can take that extra. Actually, I must say, having not such a great opinion of her as a musician to start with, I said, like, oh my God, that's such a good improvisation. Because I'm a jazz musician, more even than a classical musician, so I know very practical and from life experience what it is to improvise music. And the uninterrupted flow of consciousness that I admire with only the very, very best of the improvising artists. This is what is truly breathtaking, when not a skilled series of phrases is displayed, but there is an idea which goes through a solo of a long time, like, for example, with Keith Jarrett. Almost always when he plays. Or of the younger ones, Brad Meldau. This is so wonderful. And Mother has that. She doesn't have the skill to do that on very complicated phrases or very complicated chord progressions. She just doesn't. She doesn't have the library. But the consciousness is super evolved.
Well, what I would like to share with you on this is that my feeling has always been, many people don't like Mother's music. They don't like to listen to it. And I felt it was like seeds falling to the earth.
Right.
And someone would have to grow those plants or germinate those seeds into an orchestral setting. And you've done it.
Yeah, I've done that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's somewhere. There is a video I can give you. It was basically one year that I worked on that. Pretty much full time.
Well, then we should get into Sunil's music for a little bit.
Right. In this context, for the 18th, there was also a very, very good pianist in Auroville. Some man called Frank Gutschmidt. Absolute high-end modern classical pianist. Can play everything. Is a genius, really a genius musically. He knows everything that Stockhausen ever wrote for keyboard. He knows it by heart. Yeah, it's unbelievable. So he also plays wonderfully Mozart. I played a Beethoven sonata, the 10th, with him in Auroville. And the day before that, he played all the full Goldberg by heart, Goldberg variations. A very memorable concert. And he helped. He had to go before this performance. He had to go because he had concerts in Europe. But for the rehearsals, he played the piano that I had written, additionally to the organ, which was sort of central. And it was very interesting. So he is some sort of a Sunil fan. So he said, no, this one and that one. And then he plays chord progressions of Sunil's music. And he says, this is wonderful, and see what. And I'm like, sorry, I don't hear it. So, but because of his respect, I said, okay, let's do it. So in the concert that we played together, we did as an encore a piece of Sunil, played by Nada Prem on the viola and me on the violin and Frank on the grand piano. And still, it doesn't reach me. Still, it doesn't reach me. I did it, I played it, I analyzed it, and I have done that exercise with a few other pieces of Sunil also. re-recording it, transcribing it, and no,
Okay, well,
doesn't work for me.
I always felt that Sunil was a transition into a new experiment. And then when Mother spoke to me to bring down a new music, that it had to be something even higher because she said you have to bring the pure music down. And you know that Stockhausen was a disciple of Sri Aurobindo.
Yeah, I know. That's why Frank Gutschmidt came to Auroville. Because he was Stockhausen's pianist.
Wow.
So he came to Auroville already like 90, probably 96 or something like that. And we had a concert in Pitanga Hall. And after that concert, everybody was gone, but there was still the piano. And Carol was there, and Nuria was there, and a singer called Young Mi at the time. And then this young man came, says, "Are you Holger?" I'm like, "Yeah." "I'm new here, and I'm also a musician." Said, "Oh, nice. What you play?" "Piano. I could play a concert if you want here." I said, "Okay. What would you play?" "I don't know." And I'm like, "Okay. Sit, here's a piano, play." So he was playing 15 minutes of Zodiac of Stockhausen. And we were all like,
oh my God.
Nobody spoke. All these 5, 6 people that were there was like, and it was the first time I heard Stockhausen and said like, oh my God, how good is this music? Because he could bring that to such a beautiful life. So he says, yeah. So I said, okay, where do you stay? I just arrived yesterday. I say, I don't know where to stay in Auroville. I said, I know. So in my house.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
Well, I want to ask you next about someone that I've not been able to connect with, who has said that all his music came from Sri Aurobindo.
Okay.
Giacinto Scelsi.
I never heard. Who?
Giacinto, Giacinto, Scelsi.
I have to hear. Okay.
Oh my gosh, yes,
Oh my
you
gosh.
do.
Okay.
And he composed for all kinds of instruments. And he said it came purely from Sri Aurobindo. Now, I cannot get into it, but that's my...
Well, I have to hear that.
My lack.
Maybe I find it fascinating or not. Where is inspiration coming from? When I was young, I saw something in the television, a bearded man, and the interviewer said, please tell us, where is music coming from? Where is your music coming from? And he looked in the camera, and there was 30 seconds silence in the German television, and I'm like, oops, what's going on? Then he says, music is coming from silence. I said, this is interesting. Who's that man? It was Arvo Pärt.
Oh my gosh.
That's how I saw first time Arvo Pärt.
Yeah.
And I like it. And I believe this is quite close to the truth.
I do also. I really do.
And if I say this, music doesn't come from Mozart, music doesn't come from Sri Aurobindo either. Music comes from silence. Then I understand that when I read Sri Aurobindo, there is a kind of all-over vibration, right?
Yes.
And that is a similar thing to when I play Mozart. There is a feel, there is a kind of vibration to all that Mozart writes that's impressive. And I can very well, in this case, very well distinguish between, between something that is coming from the time, classical music at that time in Austria, say.
Mm-hmm.
Just at the moment I play with a student, I play Michael Haydn duos, violin, viola. And two of the greatest compositions are for violin and viola are the duos by Mozart. They are fantastic. Towering compositions for such weird combination of two instruments.
Yeah.
And Michael Haydn actually also did that. He is the younger brother of Joseph Haydn. And he actually got the job that Mozart declined at the Archbishop in Salzburg. Mozart said, no, I don't want to be around my dad. I go better to Vienna. So Michael Haydn got that job, and they were friends. So one time, Mozart traveled back to Salzburg with Constanze, and it is known that Michael had a family and spent a lot of time with them and was not such a workhorse. And he had to bring 6 duets for viola and violin to the Archbishop. He wanted that. It was a job to be done to earn his money. And then his daughter was sick, and he said to Mozart, to Wolfgang, he says, you have something lying around? I have to give this next week. And he says, no, but I can make. And then he wrote these 2 fantastic pieces. And actually, he gave it like this to Michael Haydn, and Michael Haydn had his 6 pieces giving to the Archbishop. Now, it's super interesting to play those 2 pieces of Mozart and those 4 pieces of Michael Haydn. And probably the Archbishop didn't realize, but I do. It's a different feeling. But where? Because all the skill sets and so on, that's all the same. The way it goes there, but something is a little bit not so great.
Yes.
And when this Mr. says his music is coming from Sri Aurobindo, to me, this is a paraphrasing that he is liking to be in this vibration.
But Stockhausen said the same thing.
Yes, still.
Okay, okay.
I know somebody who knows Stockhausen very well.
Okay.
And Stockhausen was till his very end egomaniac.
Oh, yes.
Nothing particularly special. He was a musician, so noble, and a great one.
Back to the silence, I think it was Arthur Schnabel who said, I play the same notes as everyone, but the difference is in the silence between the notes.
Oh, beautiful.
Very beautiful, huh?
Yeah, this is very good.
Yeah.
And this silence is not Sri Aurobindo's silence. I don't think so.
No.
Not for me.
Yeah. That is so much more pervasive. So.
It's the silence that Sri Aurobindo draws from, that I believe.
Exactly.
And then, if I cannot directly contact this silence, which I can most of the time not, yeah, if I cannot, then Sri Aurobindo can be for me a help to contact that silence.
Yes, very true.
Well, this is for me, so.
And so one importunes him to help us in that silence.
Yes.
And the help comes. For me, it's in poetry. It comes all the time.
Yes.
And I'm always remembering him and thanking him because I'm not a poet.
Ah.
I would never consider myself. I never studied poetics.
See, but that is the question of skill set.
Yeah.
In that sense, I would say Mother was not a musician, but she can still sit down and play. So that depends what you want to do with it. And she contacts maybe not so much the silence as more a particular vibration that she expresses in everything she does. So whether this is organizing an ashram or making a painting or saying something to Satprem in the agenda or playing something on the organ, there's always the same consciousness.
Yes.
When she says, like, I don't sleep in that sense. I just change the location of my work when I sleep. At the time when I was young and read these things, I liked it, I found it impressive, but I had no experience on that.
Yeah.
But now sleep gets different with becoming a little older.
Yes.
And I get now more of that because sometimes I'm working in the sleep, consciously. Sometimes.
I'd like to ask you to comment a bit on modern music, modern classical music, what your experience is in these current years of such turmoil.
Worldwide, you mean?
Worldwide, yes.
Well, for me, the now already not so modern anymore, the minimal music was very important. Steve Reich, Terry Riley, all very inspired by India, like me, very inspired by India, and then eventually ending up here. I thought that the spirit of search for yoga of cells, etc., is in this music the most. I feel this kind of static, but all the time permutating energy. For me, it's similar to a meditative.
Can you send me a few pieces?
Yeah,
listen
you
to?
don't know Steve Reich?
Steve Reich?
You don't know?
I've heard a little of his.
But
The
not
other
so.
one I've not heard.
Terry Riley?
No.
Yeah, he was actually, he is more or less the initiator, important initiator of that music. Not having that, didn't get so much fame like Philip Glass, for example. He got famous with it. You know Philip Glass?
Oh, very well.
Yeah. So
Koyana Satis and
exactly.
all these things, yeah.
But Terry Riley wrote, I think must be maybe 68 or something like that. He wrote a very important piece to start lots of this movement, which was called In C, because it's a collection of, I think, 40 phrases, short phrases, that a number of musicians play like an orchestra. So the first musician would start alone with the first phrase, and then a second one joins him, and a third one joins him. Random instruments, who is there? And then by the time 5 players play, one of the players starts to play the second phrase. And then by the time the last player starts, the field is fully there, maybe 40 musicians play, then they play 3-4 different phrases. And then the whole thing moves through those phrases at random times. And what you hear is all the time changing, but you never hear why and when. So all the pieces fit together. That's why it's in C, because in the key of C. If you hear that, can last 25 minutes or last 40 minutes, depending on how many musicians and how they individually feel, how they move on. Isn't that interesting?
Very interesting.
Exactly.
I only have one example, Da ist ein Rose Blume, of the old, the Swedish fellow who put it into a totally different context. There is a rose blooming.
I don't know.
No. Well, he took the first phrase, and then they sang the whole thing through, and then the first phrase was on top of the second phrase, and then the third phrase came. And it ends beautifully, but you go through all these permutations on the way, which are so interesting.
So for me, it was very interesting because it resonated very much with my idea of a society, how they work together. It was much more interesting than a fully written score with like Beethoven sonata or so. I felt that this way of prescribing exactly to everybody what he has to do in which moment, even if the result is fantastic and beautiful like a Beethoven symphony, it's somewhat exhausted what mankind can do with this.
Yes.
And therefore to have a improvising orchestra, in a way improvising, was very attractive. But of course, we see immediately the limitation is chaos and a kind of gray zone. Everybody plays everything what he wants.
Yeah.
That won't work. The sensitivity of total listening to what my partner is doing works with 3 people. I have done that a lot. With 4 gets difficult, 5 very difficult. If the diversity of instruments is there, it's a little better. If there's a drummer who is doing that, he's doing it alone. The bass player is doing his job alone. The pianist is doing his job alone. The saxophonist is job alone. Then it kind of works better. But I played string quartet. Everything sounds same. Free improvisation of 4 strings, which we did a lot, is precariously difficult. And if you have more of that, the problem is of graying out everything. You don't see shapes anymore. You don't see anything anymore. So it becomes useless. So I found that this trick that Terry Riley used to have 40 people playing, and it makes some kind of sense, and still it has an unprecedented amount of freedom while moving. I thought this is a very interesting, like a social experiment, like I believe Auroville should be. Like everybody does what he wants. But why does it still make sense? Because there is a kind of blueprint sense behind it, which I believe is sufficiently given by Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Yeah? So if everybody just reads and understands Sri Aurobindo in the way he wants,
Of course.
and then not put any detailed regulations as, and on 3 we play Savitri, and, then we should be able to get a kind of obviously anarchistic project, which was for me always the attraction I had to Auroville. And I kind of enjoyed myself taking part in a 50-year-old still working project where nothing that happens, not so much, that happens is prescribed by a score. And here I should stop, otherwise we get political.
Yeah, exactly. But is his music more classical or is it more jazz-oriented?
Terry Riley?
Terry Riley.
You would not hear much jazz. No, it's not very jazz. No, it's...
But when Wynton Marsalis had his group, was that?
Well, then, no, Wynton Marsalis is for me a classical musician.
Yeah.
It's not interesting in terms of improvisation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
His brother, I think, is a saxophonist.
He is a very good saxophonist. He is more of a jazz musician. I mean, of course, Wynton Marsalis will not agree. And he's a towering player. So, but for me, he's a classical player within the jazz
Where do you
frame.
see music going from here?
What I said.
Just what you said about Steve Reich and Terry
yes,
Riley.
not necessarily in that was actually only like maybe living for 2 decades, the minimal music, then already it becomes classical. We have this as human beings, people who are moving in front of time, they have a certain urge, and then when they find something that is graspable by other people, then it crystallizes very fast. Nowadays, very fast. So in jazz, there are always living beings who do things that are not done 10 years ago. And generally, they are not famous.
What I have experienced in minimal music is that there were a few high points. Arvo Pärt, maybe Sir John Tavener a little bit, but it didn't go too far, I felt.
Yeah, it's true, but it might be that the time of towering individuals like Mozart, Beethoven, and so on is not what we should look for.
This is why I have written the book, The Descent of a New Music. And now mostly I'm into choral and vocal music. but I was able to pick out those composers that brought down a piece of something of the new music. And it goes across all countries, from Russia to America. So I'll give you that book.
Yeah, looking forward
Yeah.
to that.
Well, of course, it's mostly choral, based on choral composers.
So that same thing, I believe, is true also for eminent spiritual personalities. I think the development that I hope for is not waiting for another Jesus or another prophet in that sense, which were probably very admirable, towering people. But it's not what mankind needs. Another one of those.
And
I think.
Yes, and Mother tells us that Sri Aurobindo is the last avatar.
As
That after this, there'll be continual evolution. It won't stop with the supramental. She says you'll go into the realms of Satchidananda and more exploration.
Sure, but then again, the people after Muhammad said he is the last prophet. So there is a tendency of, so this is the last one. But it's already for me as I read Sri Aurobindo, it's already there that better to lift gradually the total consciousness than to have one genius spiking out.
Absolutely.
And of course, mankind produces with different capacities always geniuses, sure.
Yeah,
We have those.
We had Tesla. I mean,
Yeah, or yes, and in music you have them all the time. Fantastic. This is Brad Mehldau, this is Pat Metheny, this is Keith Jarrett in that field. In the classical field, I don't know so much. I know more about jazz. But this is, of course, when they play, they are able to bring something back to so many other musicians like me that don't have that kind of individual genius. That is beautiful. Thank you for them.
yes.
But we have to understand, I think it's helpful to understand that the consciousness of mankind is, say, like a mountain, and there will be a rock will be on top, and it will be on the very top, so this is fantastic. But if the other stones of the mountains are not there, this stone will fall down straight. It's not flying there by itself. It is just on top. And other stones are outside, further down, and again, other stones are right in the middle of the mountains because it's not hollow. They don't even see ever the light, and they are important. As he said yesterday, because nothing is important, is unimportant in this creation, he says. No, some are petty, some are grandiose, but the petty, wasn't it somehow like that?
Yeah.
You read
Yes,
it yesterday.
was. Yes.
Yeah, that's nice. I like that sentence very much. So as a musician, you should not look out, or an artist, or you should not look out to be, what I did a lot, to be like the stone on top. Next to Beethoven or Schubert. My God, Schubert suffered so much that he's not next to Beethoven.
Yeah.
Totally pointless.
Yeah.
He should have seen where he is. It would be fantastic enough.
Because each one has his own gift to give.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So that to modify this philosophy and say this is totally beyond an individual, no matter how genius that individual is. This is something we shall and can practice in Auroville very well.
Yes.
Everyone who is there. One guy plants trees. Some other guy makes music. Some other guy doesn't know what to do with his life. Same.
The one descended into the multitude.
Yes, so better you appreciate that multitude.
Yes.
Rather than saying we have nothing achieved and stuff like that. What does that even say?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Namaste.